Hey guys, welcome back to the Hustling Horsepower YouTube channel. We appreciate all of you that like and subscribe to the journey and watch the last video. Here's coming up to part 2 of the makeover of Independent Gangster, our little home-built hot rod. We will be fully stocked with merchandise for Gangster's Paradise in 2 weeks, $40,000 Friday night and Saturday night. Come on out. So before we get into the video, some of you guys asked about Jeremy's little hot rod here. This is an all aluminum small block that he built, him and his kids and his dad built. This thing, 60 foot's really freaking hard. You can see the 6 week sticker on it. He's done sick week and drag week for multiple years now. This car is pretty freaking cool. It's an all aluminum small block, blowers, carbs, old school. Doesn't have a whole lot of like power management or nothing like that on it. It's like, you know, you just smash the throttle and go. And the thing runs pretty freaking good. But some of you guys asked about it in the previous video, so here's a quick little video of it. I'll get some video of it when we go out testing here before too long. Guys, I skipped part of the process here, but I used a Sharpie here, just a red Sharpie, not that one, a different red Sharpie, and I used a micrometer right here for 6/250 inch or 5/8 diameter here. So I went through and I scribed this sucker. But, of course, you can't see a scribe mark on silver, so I just used the red Sharpie as like a bluing die, and now I'm going through there and I'm cutting it. Ideally, you'd put it in a lathe, but this sucker's going to be pretty dang close, and then I'll just finish it off on a belt sander. So, guys, I got one side fitted up here. You can see it's in there pretty dang closely. It's not refined. You could still, it almost looks like a gap there, but that's just black Sharpie mark there. So, what I'm doing here is I got another bolt here, and to get the other side perfect, I'm gonna go through here like this, and we're gonna lock it in like that. And now I'm gonna hold this piece when I put the phone down. I'm gonna go through and I'll mark this other side so that these things are perfect, so that this sleeve sits in here perfectly. What I'm doing here is I relocated this upper hole here to get the camber right in the car and caster right, so then we can start building control arms. So guys, now what we did here is we essentially stood the strut angle up a little bit. So we're gonna go through, see if this all works out now. It might not, you know. See what happens. Put this on the back. Knock that on the back side. Now we'll relocate this top one. See how bad I am. And now, what we just did is we stood the strut angle up, something like right around 5 degrees from where it was, from factory Mustang to straight Gangster. So now we'll go put this back on the car and see how it all works out. Well, guys, I'm a one-man band, so you got to hold it with me for a second. So we're gonna come over here to the drop axle. Check out these killer wheels. But yes, I'll be switching the bolt pattern on that those struts there, that brake kit, to reuse these wheels. But I'm stripping the axle per se. I took the rack off of it. The rack is I'm gonna have to rebuild all these mounts. This is 100% me. I built all this whole deal here. I've thought about building them and selling them, because I think it's a really cool way to run a drop axle, a really safe way to run a drop axle and go really fast with it. I'm not gonna tell you the mile an hour we've been, but in the Dirty 30, we've been 175 or something like that in the Dirty 30 with that same style setup. Homegrown Hustler, we've been really fast to the 8th, and Straight Gangster's getting there too. But the rack is now sitting under Straight Gangster with those deals there. So I might have to adjust the tie rods and stuff like that, but I'm trying to work on and figure out the positioning of the control arms and stuff like that. I think I could get away with some pretty cool stuff here, reincorporating the 4-bar mounts, for the drop axle setup, and building a little K-member underneath it to hold the rack and pinion and the front support bars for the control arms. So guys, we are essentially at day one on the car. I spent about 3 hours on it last night, figuring out some stuff, just looking it over and getting a game plan essentially. Today is actually like work a day. So I got, just to give you a little update, I offset those bushings in the control arms to get the wheel angled right. I'll go and show you to get this angle right now. It's in at 88 degrees. I don't know if you can see that. I guess I'll cheat. It's in at 88 degrees. So that means that the top of the tire is in 2 degrees. So it's gonna be on a slight angle, like, the tire's on a slight angle like this. Of course, this is exaggerated, but as it goes through its motion with a control arm, a single control arm, this tire is gonna rotate, and at probably 3 inches of travel, something like that, it's gonna be straight, and then at 5 inches of travel, it's gonna be down a little bit. But that's not the big factor. That just wears out tires. But we're drag racers, we replace our tires quite regularly. I promise you this geometry is gonna be a lot better than a lot of the drag cars out there, with factory, 100% factory style mounting points and stuff like that up top. So this is of course, it's a complete one-off deal that I'm doing, but it's just geometry. It's I might make it sound a little bit easier than it is, but you just got to work through it. And I'm working through it at a pretty decent pace right here. So with these are strange struts. We have Vikings going on the car, but I'm using these ones because I didn't want to scratch up the Viking ones. I might have to go through and rethread this upper bar a little bit more so I could get a little bit more treble out of it, so I can use my adjusters and stuff like that. But it's all part of the process, right? So with these shocks right here, they have about 6.5 inches of treble. We'll probably do about 1.5 inches of compression and 5 to 6 inches of extension to basically just stabilize the rear tire and help keep the chassis dynamic, like I've talked about in previous videos, issues that we've ran into with the drop axle. So right now, the biggest factor when doing front end alignments or race cars is having the steering proper for the control arms and having the toe not overly, you want to keep a little bit of toe in the car so you can drive the car. You see a lot of cars going out there and they put a bump steer kit on the car, but they never actually check what bump steer is. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on after I get this rack mounted in the car. Well, guys, I just stopped at this little hardware shop, Medina Hardware in Medina, Ohio, and got me some 1/2 inch flange nuts. So 1/2 inch bolts are a 3/4 inch hole. So we're going to drill this just under 3/4 of an inch, and these will get pressed into the frame. Then I'll TIG weld them into the frame, and I'll use them as a mount to support some things. So about probably about a 25-minute ride out there, and they didn't have any grade 8 bolts, so we got to run back to Tractor Supply to pick up some bolts and a whole bunch of running around when I should be working. But hey, that's all part of the game. Well, guys, it is right about midnight on Friday night, and Jeremy over here was helping me get the rack mount and all the rest of that crap mounted in the car. Stuff that just takes more than 2 hands. So the rack is up in the car. The lower control arm mounts are tacked into place. All that stuff is made. This right here, don't worry, that's gonna get finished off and stuff like that. I just couldn't film everything, because if I filmed everything, I'd still be in step 1, and like we just can't afford that right now. So I got to go through, and of course I got to finish weld all this stuff, and add another piece to this bracket right here, and clean all this up. But it's all in tack mode, so In the morning, start making ball joints, start making the lower control arms. I have the cups right here, so we just got to press them into the cones, and then fab up the lower control arms. The chances of making it to pour your own puddle are kind of slim, but the chance is still there. So Jeremy's buddy Jay might be stopping over in the morning, and I can get back after it at about 8 o'clock in the morning. But we got to start making some noise in the morning. So for right now, I think we're gonna call it a night, get some rest, and because tomorrow night, if I head out to Michigan, it is a 2.5 hour ride. We'll be racing till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, so it'd be a long one. But the car's pretty good, and we're gonna see what happens. We're making some pretty good progress for essentially just 1 day's worth of work today.
Yeah. You need anything from Summit? Jay's running to Summit real quick, and then he said he'll come over.
Well, they got those spacers.
Huh?
They got those spacers.
Well, guys, this is the modular deal here. I made it all modular so I can go through and put it back to the other way if decide be. So I went through here, and there's nuts welded in here. So there's this one here and two on the bottom that attach the holes on this member right here. So same on this side. And then rack mount, control arms, all that stuff is all in this piece right here. Well, guys, here we are. We're heating up the strut mount, well, the ball joint cup, rather. And then I'm gonna go over here and press it in on the press over there. We got the one done already. Ready to go. These are about 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch longer than stock, but we're fabricating everything, so that don't really matter. We just gotta figure out the camber caster with the longer ball joint in it. But we gotta figure that all out anyway, since we are building the thing. My socket. Man, this one's going way easier. This one's sliding in like butter. I wonder if it was a little bit warmer.
See, you turned it around too.
I cycled the other one too.
Did you?
I got heat up several sides to it. So guys, these guys right here are kind of a pain in the butt. They're spiral locks, just like on a wrist pin. And it's kind of like a coil spring deal. So you start the first one, then you just roll it in. But you gotta make sure, unlike a wrist pin, these things can slide out the bottom. So you gotta make sure you don't go too far with it. Otherwise you gotta start all over. Boom. Now our dust cap is out. And we're ready to put them in the spindles and get to building our control arms. All right, guys, one thing I didn't really talk about yet is when you're doing ball joints and building spindles and going through and doing stuff like that, you gotta make sure, especially on like a ball joint, the tapers are all different depending on if it's Ford, Mopar, or so on and so forth. Different years, different makes, and different models. So you gotta make sure the taper is proper. Otherwise, so when you put it up in there, you gotta make sure it's snug before you tighten it down. You could tighten it down, of course it's gonna tighten up even if the taper is wrong, but then your steering is gonna go to hell and everything else, and everything's gonna wear out really, really quickly, and yeah. So guys, right now what I'm gonna be working on here, I'm actually gonna use the rack to hold the spindle where I need it. Now this is real life stuff. This isn't TV stuff. I don't have a rack, a spindle mount. So when I say that, like a spindle jig to hold the spindle in place to build your control arms and stuff like that. So I gotta go through and work through it. Now I can't say I recommend people going in and doing this stuff unless you have some like real fabrication skills and stuff like that and have a good understanding on how all this stuff works. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, because if I listened to everyone that told me not to do things, well then I wouldn't be doing much of anything right now. So I'm gonna use the rack. The rack is fully mounted and stuff like that. I'm gonna use this bolt here to hold this in place. I got this jigged up. I'm gonna put it at 14 inches because we're running on a 28-inch tall tire, and I'm gonna set the wheelbase and all that stuff. We already figured that out pretty closely. I went through and measured the wheelbase and set the camber and caster pretty closely. But when we build the control arms, that's what's going to finalize everything. So I'm going to go through here, set the wheelbase, use the rack to set the width on where the spindle needs to be, and then go through and start measuring things so I can start building the control arms. So guys, I just measured the axle and double checked that. That was sitting at 51 inches here. So we're gonna go through, and I got the camber caster set on this. We're gonna go through here. We're gonna measure from our center line here back to our mark here, and sitting about 25, right around 25 and a half. 25 and a half would be 51 inches. So this setup right here should be about a ½ inch narrower hub to hub than the drop axle, but that's plenty close. Just gives me a little bit more turning radius. It should be good to go. Now we're gonna have to measure. Now we're gonna have to crawl under here. I'll show you. These are gonna be our lower control arm mounts, and they're gonna tie directly into the spindle. So I need to go and measure that up here and start working on making those. So guys, this aluminum tube that you see here on the right side of the picture, sitting in the lower four-link bar location, that is where the lower control arm / rear strong arm of the control arm bolts into. That tube right there is so I can measure from that center point to the center of the hub to set wheelbase. I didn't video that, but I just wanted to inform you guys of that information. Here you can see just about everything mocked up. The front control arm I built, the rear part of the control arm built, and wheelbase is set, camber caster, and all of that is set here in this picture. Alright guys, right now I'm going through and getting ready to do some rosette welds. Not rosette welds. I'm drilling the control arm so I could go and do some rosette welds, or also known as plug welds, so that when the bung goes in there, they'll have the butt weld around 360 degrees. They'll have two rosette welds. I'm using about, whatever, something like a 5/16, but if you watch my normal videos, previous videos, building the car and everything like that, I usually don't use a proper size drill bit. I usually use, let's say like 11/32 drill bit or something like that instead of a 5/16 drill bit. Because 5/16 drill bits, I try to keep those for, more important stuff when you actually have to drill a 5/16 hole. But something like this, doesn't matter if it's off a 32nd or whatever. It doesn't matter if you go 1/4 inch, 5/16, 3/8 hole. Whatever you can get in there to do a nice rosette weld, plug weld to help lock that piece in there. What that does is not only does it weld the rod end or the tube end to the pipe, when you weld it, it essentially locks that center piece in there. So when the weld goes into the bung, that bung would literally have to rip out through all the tubing if it's welded in properly. So I'm gonna go through here, weld this up, or drill this out, and finish up. This is the last bar for the control arms, and both control arms will be made. Rack is mounted. We just gotta figure out the bump steer.